My name's Tony Hilliard. Today's repair is a Lucas wiper motor switch. This model of motor was very popular on very many British cars, including MGs and Austin Healey's from the 1930s to the 1960s. Like many Lucas parts, it had its good points and its bad points. This one, the switch falls apart. But they're a little crude, but they do generally give good service. The particular model we are repairing today is well known for the on-off lever falling off. You can find replacement chrome on-off levers for sale all over the internet. The problem often comes when you try to install them. The on-off lever is made of brass and chrome plated. At the factory they obviously had a special press to make the brass lever with the interior steel switch part. The problem with replacement parts, very few people have the same type of heavy press available to them. So we have to resort to effectively riveting the parts together by hand. The danger comes when you realise that the brass does not like to be riveted or peened over. You can happily rivet steel as it's almost smooth and soap-like, but with brass it tends to be crystalline by nature and tends to crack and break off when peened or riveted. So let me show you one way to assemble the replacement on-off lever to your Lucas wiper motor. This is a typical installation, happens to be on an MG. That's the wiper motor. To operate, you pull out the spindle lever and flick the on-off switch to on. To stop it, you flick the switch off, pull it out and lock it back in together. Right, I've taken this one apart before, but this is for the video to show you how to take it apart. 2 screws at the side, undo the screw on the spindle lever, pull the spindle lever off, slide the cover off, make sure you've got the screws undone. There we go. The actual switch is a copper strip. I'll just show you that. When the lever comes up to the off position, it pushes the strip apart. Like that. When it's off, it pushes it apart. When it goes on, it lets the 2 contacts make. And this is the little part that falls off inside. It's got a little button on the top that touches the actual contact. This particular switch has been repaired before, I think it was with Araldite glue, and needless to say that didn't last very long. This is the interior part. You can see it's got a square hole in it. That's what we've got to rivet onto the actual chrome switch on the outside. Chrome switch on the outside, that goes in the back, and it's got a square end to it, and that has to join up with the square end in the switch part itself. Make sure you get it round the right way. Just temporarily push it into position so you can see. That's what we've got to try and achieve once it's riveted on. Now this motor is a little stiff, so while we've got it apart, we might as well do a little bit of maintenance on it. On both sides there's a little ball bearing that's spring loaded, and that's an oiler. We want to get a little drop of fine oil, and if we press the little ball bearing down, spring loaded ball bearing, put a little drop of oil on there, we can oil the shaft inside. Push the ball bearing up and down a few times, make sure the oil goes in. I say it doesn't need very much, but while we've got it apart it's a good idea to do it. Clean the excess oil off.
There's another one on the other side, on the underside, so while we're at it, we'll do that one as well. Again, make sure the ball bearing is free, it's not been covered in paint or cushionery. Yep, definitely free. Tiny drop of oil. Again, pump the little ball bearing in and out on its spring. Make sure the oil goes inside. Yep, believe it or not, that's a bit better. Now, put the on-off switch in with its square end. Put our little steel switch part in the right way around so that little button is at the top. That's the thing that slides across the actual contacts on the inside of the motor. Now, getting this started is tricky because I haven't got three hands. So what I usually do is put it into position, push the steel switch part, interior switch part, into position with a screwdriver, make sure it's well home. Then I use an automatic center punch just to go around the edge chrome brass shaft and pin over the edge of the brass just a little bit to hold the steel switch part in place. Otherwise, if you try and do it with a hammer and a punch to start with, the steel part flies all over the place. So once it's in position, then you can take your hammer and your center punch and tap round the edge of the brass square on the shaft to try and splay out the brass so it will grip the steel switch part. Yep, it's holding in place. There we are, that's all the broken bits out of it. That's what we want to try and achieve, but we want it to stay on there permanently. Now I usually use a square-ended punch and a hammer. Now we want to try and splay out or pin the brass lever, making sure that the little steel part is staying as far up the square shoulder as possible. And we want to try and splay out or pin the brass so it spreads out and holds the steel switch part into position. And that's what we're trying to achieve. Literally a square peg in a square hole. Take off the spindle control. Put the cover back on. Carefully does it. Tighten up the clamping screws for the cover. Put the spindle lever back on. It's got a square, this sits on a square as well, so you've got to fiddle it so it grips. There we are. Put the screw back in. Pull the spindle out, turn it off, pull the spindle out and it clips back in and locks the two together. On, off, spindle out, clips it in.
Well, I hope you found that useful. Doing a nice solid job can be tricky, but well worth the effort. It's not easy, so it might take you a little while to get into it. Until next time, cheerio!